All right, so we got our markers floating there in space, but we don't know what they mean. Now, if you look through A-frame documentation, you see you could have used, instead of a plane, used text. You could have just labeled what it is floating there in front of it. So if it was like, hey, my house, and you could just say my house. But let's do something a step above, and let's make it so that I can click on those markers and they get more information about those, right? So it's likely you're probably going to want to use some combination of having a marker and maybe text that says like this restaurant or this, location, and then you click on it and something else comes on. So we're not going to worry about that. We'll just put click events on our markers. So let's go back to our cut and paste document here. And the first thing I have is, let's cut and paste it and I'll explain it. So where we need to put this is in our script tag. I'm going to give it some space here, right? I don't want to put it, it says you'll put something here, but you're going to actually put something above here. We'll put something else there. So inside this first script tag, we started writing these things, I'm going to paste this in. And what this is a simple data structure used in JavaScript called an object. And you can think of an object as kind of a key value list, right? So you'll see these things here. You don't really need to exactly know what works, but you can kind of suss it out, right? So each marker, we have two markers right down here, and we're going to have a title for it. So call it someplace or this restaurant or whatever. And then I have this place for content. And you'll notice this content is written in HTML. This is where we'd put in the body of all the content that we wanted to put in. You can just leave what's here for right now. And so what we're going to need to do next is write a little JavaScript to do some various things. And we're not going to write it. We're going to go ahead and just cut and paste it. So the next thing down on the list, you see this thing. So let's cut and paste this. And where are we going to put it? Let's put it right underneath what we just put in with the markers. And so this is A-frame, how you register a component in A-frame. It's called Click Listener. We'll see this later on when we replace the camera. But what happens here is once A-frame, the scene renders, it's going to figure out like what are all the locations. So if you remember, we put a class of location on all of our markers, on both of our markers. It's going to say, okay, get this info box, which we haven't built yet, we'll build, and we're going to add what's called these event listeners. So when we click, right, something will happen. We'll replace things and show the information and everything. So let's go back to our thing and look at what's next. So right now we need to change our camera. So I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste this over our current camera. So right over here, here's our camera. I'm going to paste it in, make it look clean. So it has the same GPS camera rotation reader, but now you see some new things. So you see this raycaster. So how does 3D VR understand what's kind of being emitted? It has to have a raycaster, right, to kind of calculate what's the first thing that would kind of be in Z space from how we're looking. So for this, we're saying we're only listening for clicks on things that have that location class. We're saying where does the ray come from? We have to set that with the cursor thing, and we're saying mouse. It's the same as tap on a phone. And then we have this click listener that we're adding, and that's this code we wrote here that we're telling, hey, our camera is the thing that's going to be listening to these clicks. And so that's how that's all working. So let's go back to our thing here. And so now what we're going to need to do is show this info somewhere. So I wrote some HTML. So we're going to go next in the list and cut and paste this HTML. Now this is going to be outside of the scene. Really doesn't matter if you put it before or after coordinates. But here I put it right there. Make sure it's outside of the A scene. Back to our cut and paste list, and now you'll see some more what's called CSS. This is the styling that we did before for the coordinate stuff. I'm going to cut and paste that, and I have to go back up to my head, find these style tags, right? And I want to put it inside the style tags, not outside, right? The style tag should wrap this stuff, and we should keep our coordinates there, our chords styles. And lastly, well, this isn't lastly, this is one almost the last. What we need is to take this right here. And remember I said there was that, hey, we're going to put something here. I'm going to replace that with that last piece. And so if you notice, this is a click events listener for our close button. So you'll see that when we bring up some information, we have to have a way to close that to go back into AR mode. And so that's what this close button does. So the very last thing that we need to do is attach which marker information to show per thing. So looking at what I wrote here, it's looking for an attribute data marker in the thing that's getting clicked on. So what I'm going to do is cut and paste this data marker, and I'm going to go down here to my plane and say data marker, whoops, and I'm going to say this equals, and the data marker is actually these right here. These are the data markers. So I'm going to say simply marker 1, whoops, and the other one is obviously marker 2. You don't really need to know how this is completely worked. You'll just how this works if you don't know JavaScript. You can just basically cut and paste as needed here. So now we're set up here, and we should be able to go ahead and test this. And now when we click on an object, it should bring up the information. When I hit X on the information, right, we go back into AR mode. Well, the information actually just overlays anyhow. We're always in AR mode. We just close the info because it's in our way. And that's it. That's everything. We now have a working location-based AR experience. So go ahead and try to get this working. If you run into any problems, feel free to email me or contact me, and that's it.